All right, today we are diving into a really fascinating legal concept from South Korea that gets right to the heart of what a fair trial is all about. It's a practice called gamchi, and, it makes you ask a pretty fundamental question. What's more important, keeping order in the court or making sure someone gets a passionate, powerful defense? Seriously, just for a second, put yourself in that situation. Everything is on the line, and the one person who is supposed to be your champion, your voice, what if they're looking over their shoulder, scared to make the very arguments that could set you free? And look, this isn't just some abstract idea. It's the real-world dilemma we're digging into today. So, to really get why this is such a big deal, we have to start with the basics. What in the world is gamchi? What is this thing that can have such a huge impact? At first glance, gamchi seems pretty straightforward. It's basically a tool that a judge has to keep things under control in the courtroom. You can think of it like being held in contempt of court, a short detention to make sure the trial can move forward smoothly. Simple enough, right? Well, not so fast. Because here's where it all changes. When you use that tool, gamchi, not on someone yelling from the audience, but on the defense lawyer who is actively making their case, well, it suddenly stops being about just keeping order. It becomes this powerful act by the state that literally stops them in their tracks, preventing them from doing their job, which is to defend their client.
Okay, to make this idea really click, let's step away from the courtroom for a minute. We're going to use an analogy that I think just perfectly sums up the whole situation. Imagine you're watching a massive high-stakes championship game. So in this game, your lawyer, they're the coach. Their job is to fight like crazy for their team. That's the client. Their opponent is the other team's strategy, which is kind of like the prosecution's arguments. And the person with all the power, the one who makes the final calls, that's the judge, or in our game, the referee. The parallels are pretty uncanny, right? Both are fighting their hearts out to win, all within the rules.
Now, here's where you see the problem. Let's say the ref makes a truly terrible call. The coach, just doing their job, argues it passionately. But instead of just getting a warning, the ref just tosses them out of the game. So what happens to the team on the field? They get rattled, they get scared, their leader is gone, their whole game plan is in shambles, and their chance of winning, it just plummets. Punishing the coach ends up punishing the entire team.
That feeling, that fear and hesitation that spreads through the whole team, well, in the legal world, we have a name for that. It's called the chilling effect. And believe me, its impact is massive.
This is pulled right from the source material. And the key words here, the most important ones, are entire group. See, when a judge uses gamchi on one lawyer for arguing their case, it's not just a penalty for that one person. Oh no, it sends a message, a warning, to every single lawyer out there. And that message is loud and clear: push too hard, argue too forcefully, and you could be next. It's like this invisible hand that forces everyone to play it safe. Other lawyers see this happen, and maybe next time they think twice before they make a strong objection. Maybe they tone down their argument, even if they know they're right. That fear, that hesitation, it leads to weaker defenses for everyone. And this chilling effect, it's not just some academic problem for lawyers to worry about. It has very real, very damaging consequences for the justice system itself. It starts to put cracks in the very foundation of a fair trial. You can literally watch the dominoes fall. First, a lawyer gets intimidated by the threat of gamchi. Then, because they're intimidated, their defense gets weaker. That means the client's fundamental right to a proper defense is compromised. And if that right is compromised, how can you possibly call that a fair trial? The whole thing starts to fall apart. Now, you might be thinking this is just a very specific issue in one country's legal system, but it's not. This idea that a lawyer has to be able to do their job without fear is a cornerstone of justice pretty much everywhere. In fact, we're talking about fundamental principles that have been laid out for the whole world by the United Nations, defining what a fair and just system really needs to function. So let's just look at a few of these. Principle 16, no intimidation, no improper interference, period. Principle 18, you can't punish a lawyer for things they say in good faith while defending their client. And Principle 20 gives them immunity for what they say in court. The theme here is just crystal clear. A lawyer's independence is absolutely non-negotiable. And this is where the rubber meets the road. When you look at the practice of gamchi, using it against a lawyer for just making their arguments, well, according to these global standards, that looks a whole lot like improper interference. It looks like a sanction for doing their job, the very things these UN principles say you can't do. Okay, so we've talked about what gamchi is,
We've used the sports analogy, we've covered the chilling effect and the global standards. So let's pull all these threads together. At the end of the day, why does any of this really matter to you?
Think of a lawyer as a shield. They are supposed to be a shield that protects an individual from the massive, overwhelming power of the state. But if that shield has cracks in it, if the person holding it is afraid to stand their ground, then it's not much of a shield, is it? So protecting a lawyer's independence isn't about giving them special treatment. It's about making sure that if any one of us ever needs that shield, it's as strong and solid as it can possibly be. And that brings us to this one final, really tough question. Of course we need order in the courtroom. Everybody gets that. But a trial is more than just a quiet, orderly procedure. It's supposed to be a search for the truth, a fight for justice. So the real question is, where do you draw that line? When does the tool you're using to keep order start to break the very justice it's supposed to serve? Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining me.